is the new episode of Hawkeye that dropped today.
Yeah, honestly, I've got a lot higher opinions of this episode. I know last week I was extremely mixed on how it all came out, but this week was a lot better, not gonna lie.
I definitely agree. Last week I definitely was feeling a little let down about the show. I felt that it wasn't really gripping me with anything interesting, not any interesting plot points or anything. But this episode was really good because we finally got introduced to Echo. We saw a bit of her backstory, with hints that maybe Kingpin is there, and we also are just furthering the story. I mean, Clint and Kate are now working together, and the ending of the episode, you have Jack confronting Clint. So
Yeah.
I feel like we're finally progressing in a meaningful way and getting like meaningful character interactions.
And you bringing up Jack, this episode actually landed on a decent cliffhanger for once, because I know both of us were disappointed with the cliffhanger in episode 2.
Yeah. So this cliffhanger was a lot better. It's Jack confronting Clint with the Ronin sword, which is probably going to make Clint very suspicious about Jack, making him think that, oh God, this guy is like a villain that
Yeah.
wants stuff from the Avengers compound or something.
Now, what if there's a possibility that they already know each other?
That could work. The one thing I'm curious about though is that in this universe, Clint is a Shield agent.
That is the one thing that we don't know much about his past. Like, the furthest back we can go is his mission at Budapest.
Yeah. So I wonder, but then again, I'm looking at Jack and does he look older than Clint?
They don't have to be older. I mean, they look relatively the same age.
Yeah, I mean the big thing is that in the comics, Jack taught Clint because they used to work in the same circus.
Yeah, which obviously in this universe there's no connection to Hawkeye with the circus at all.
Yeah, and that makes me wonder that if Jack and Clint are somehow know each other pre-Shield days, I wonder if that means we'll see Clint's brother Trickshot, who's another archer.
Yeah.
So maybe they will know each other, maybe they won't. But I am interested in seeing the confrontation between the two.
Yeah.
Because I think we'll finally be able to put to bed this idea that Jack is the main villain or something, which we all know is not true.
Yeah. Now, one thing I do want to bring up before I forget. What do you think of that cinematography experiment they did, where they did the constant revolving to make it look like one shot car during the car chase scene?
I really liked it. I
Yeah.
thought it was really good. And it really kind of showed like the chaos of the situation where
Yeah.
like Clint is deaf and he has a teenager in his car. I say teenager very loosely. She's 22. She's the same age. No, she's a year younger than me. But like, yeah, he just has like a young girl in his car shooting arrows. He's deaf and he's getting chased by the mafia. It's
Shooting
just,
trick arrows, so it's even worse.
yeah, one of which blew up a van in the middle of New York.
Yeah. Which,
But I thought that scene was incredible, and I like that we actually saw more than what the trailer showed us, besides like the exploding arrow.
yeah.
Like we saw the putty arrow, we saw the gas arrow, we saw the Pimtech arrow, which was amazing.
Which we got to dive into that, because that brings up a whole bunch of questions.
Yeah. And overall, it just really took a lot from the comic version of that scene, but like made it very unique.
Yeah, yeah. Now I do want to talk about that Pym arrow and how in the world he got that, because as far as we know, like, Hank Pym doesn't really like to communicate with the Avengers.
So here's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that this was made by Hope during. No, it couldn't have made by Hope because she. Well, it would either need to have been made by Hope during like. No, it couldn't be Hope
See,
because she was mad at Scott during.
because think about it.
Yeah.
Up until Ant-Man, Hank Pym had been like extremely against
Antisocial, yeah.
antisocial and against interacting with any Stark, and then it carries that through to the Avengers. And then after that happens Civil War, where Hank Pym, Hope, and Scott, or not, No, Scott didn't go into hiding, did he? No, no,
No.
he was in house arrest.
Yeah, so
then
Scott and Clint got arrested, and they got put under house arrest because they have families. Meanwhile, Cap broke out Falcon and Widow.
yeah, so Hank Pym and Hope would have been in there up until 2023 because um, up until Ant-Man and the Wasp, they hadn't interacted with anybody and just came out of hiding to to
Deal with
to deal with everything that happens in that movie, and
Yeah.
then they were dusted, and then they came out. The only time we see them out interacting with other people
is the funeral.
is the funeral.
So then I'm wondering, do you think? Because here's one thing. So we know that Darren Cross during the original Ant-Man was selling Pymtech weapons
Yeah,
to various underworld dealers. Do you think that Clint got the arrows during his time as Ronin?
it could be.
Because we know that Cross sold it to Hydra and the Ten Rings, among other shady operators.
Yeah,
and we know
'cause-
one Hydra agent did steal Pymtech.
That is true, considering the fact that that Pymtech had been separated from Hank Pym for a while. Because
Yeah,
it had been, I think it was just alluded in Ant-Man that he was fired from the board of directors a few years beforehand.
yeah.
Yeah.
So it definitely looks like it could have been that the Hydra agent that stole the Pym particles, where they were able to make it into a variety of different weapons and they sold it to other criminal organizations or got them stolen from other criminal organizations on the black market, and they were just shuffled around, and eventually Ronin went on his criminal killing spree and probably like started picking up whatever.
Yeah. But with lore implications aside, were you surprised by that scene? Because I definitely was.
I was not expecting a Pymtech arrow. That was the last thing I was expecting.
Especially because, like, we don't really see a lot of trick arrows from Hawkeye. At most, we see the
Wait.
exploding arrow and the grappling hook arrow and the suction cup arrow, and that's it.
We saw the USB arrow in the Avengers. That's kind of the critical thing in his attack on the helicarrier was the USB.
Nothing wacky like putty or gas or anything like that. Like that.
He did
because that's a little more grounded.
He did use gas against Black Panther during their Civil War fight.
That is fair.
Yeah, because T'Challa caught them and he broke them, and then gas blew out of them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure one of his arrows like split into like mini drones at one point during Civil War as well.
I don't know if drones. I think it just exploded into shrapnel. Like
yeah, which is different than his normal exploding trick arrow.
Yeah,
because of it has a stronger
but these trick arrows were more grounded in reality, not like the wacky ones we see here, or the one we saw in What If.
Yeah, in What If we only saw
because we saw the force field arrow.
We saw force field arrow. We saw the knife arrow basically because he used his arrow as a knife. We saw the USB arrow, and
that one was integral to What If as well.
And we saw the nuke arrow.
Yeah,
because it had to have been it had to have been a nuke to cause that explosion.
Probably.
So yeah, this was the first
take out an entire squad of Ultron's
Sentries.
Yeah.
What was I gonna say? Yeah, the new arrows that we've seen are the putty arrows,
the
Pym arrow, the web. Not it's like a web, but not really.
Kind of like a giant,
like a net.
I would say yeah. It's more like a giant, more like the grappling hook arrow, but like on a larger scale.
Yeah, the one that like stopped their car and everything.
Yeah.
So mainly those three are like.
I mean, and the web arrow is still even grounded in reality, but the Pym arrow and the putty arrow, those are a little bit more wacky than we're used to. Yeah,
those ones we haven't seen, and even the gas arrow that he uses is now a different color.
Like it looks a little more cartoony compared, because like the smoke that came out when T'Challa caught them,
they were like gray.
It was like a little more realistic smoke, and meanwhile the other one was
like
purple.
Yeah. So I really like the trick arrows, and I hope we see more of them.
If we see more Hawkeye, which I mean is fair, but
We know we're gonna see more because one, he is getting shot at while he's dressed in a suit, and two, we see him jump out of a
oh,
window,
you
and
mean
he's
in the series?
yeah, we're gonna
Okay,
see it. We're gonna see him at least repel over Madison Square Garden.
yeah. I just hope he retires after this series because he looks tired as hell in this
Oh,
series.
he's definitely gonna retire. I think
Like,
what's gonna happen is that he's gonna retire. Kate becomes the new Hawkeye, and Echo will become the new Ronin.
yeah, because like I said last week, he's been trying to retire for a decade
Yeah.
now.
So I think he's retiring. Kate becomes the new Hawkeye. Echo becomes the new Ronin. And speaking of Echo, what did you think of her backstory?
It was interesting, I gotta say, because like there's the obvious like thing to point out, which is for anyone who has watched the Netflix Daredevil show, there's like a hand that comes out behind the camera that like encourages her as a child, and like oh, that's obviously Kingpin.
But it's not just that. There's laughter, and it sounds exactly like Vincent
It
D'Onofrio.
sounds really like Vincent
I
D'Onofrio.
think that it is Kingpin, if you go to what is it, the Marvel Studios wiki, I am pretty sure they already have him casted in their sources, and they only post official castings.
Yeah,
So, like, let's be honest here. He's in the show.
which will be extremely gratifying because Netflix's Daredevil is probably one of the best MCU stories out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which surprisingly, it stays consistently good throughout the whole series.
Yeah.
Unlike,
Oh, actually, they removed. Wait. Yeah, nope. Yeah, they still have him. They still have him listed on the wiki, so he's definitely in there.
yeah, like I didn't even have to look online to know. Like, yeah, that's definitely Kingpin,
Yeah.
especially knowing like the comic book backstory where I believe it was so in the comics she was the daughter of an assassin of Kingpin.
Yes. So basically, it's kind of very similar. So in this show, Crazy Horse, which is the name of the assassin, he leads the Tracksuit Mafia. In the comics, he doesn't lead the Tracksuit Mafia, but he is an assassin that works for Kingpin.
Yeah,
He's one of the many assassins that work for Kingpin alongside Clown, alongside Echo. Well, not alongside Echo, but like Clown. There's Bullseye. There's Elektra sometimes. Like
yeah.
the various assassins that will get hired by Kingpin.
No,
Crazy Horse was one of them, and Kingpin kills him in the comics. But in this,
it's Ronin that
Ronin that kills him,
yeah,
which I find to be very interesting.
yeah,
Um, I'm really interested. Part of me thinks that, oh, that's definitely Clint because it looked exactly like how he was killing off the Yakuza members in Endgame.
yeah.
But Screen Crush had pointed out that it could potentially be an imposter, like how Kingpin had Bullseye dress up as Daredevil in Daredevil season 3.
Hmm.
And while that sounds really cool, I do think it's Clint. And
Yeah, I don't see that resurfacing in this because it's kind of like it.
if it is to happen, then it would have to happen in Echo series.
Yeah, I don't know how satisfying that would be.
I don't think it would be satisfying. I think it's Clint, and the main reason why is there's something I picked up, which is that Clint doesn't tell Kate he's Ronin.
Yeah,
He's made it very apparent that he wants Ronin and Hawkeye to be considered two distinct entities, despite the fact that if he just told her he was Ronin, it would make things a lot easier.
yeah. Though at the same time, he does have his reservations as to telling her because I mean, she is pretty talkative.
I think it's less that she's pretty talkative and more about the fact that he does in some way feel like he is a role model.
Yeah,
He just doesn't want to admit it, in part because he did become the Ronin and he did become like a vigilante that murdered in not indiscriminately, but if you were amongst the criminal underworld, you were murdered indiscriminately,
yeah,
which was like a big no-no for like an Avenger who was forced to sign the Sokovia Accords.
Yeah, especially because like there was like I lost my train of thought. Like
But I think it's Clint, and I think he's hiding that fact because he can't admit to himself.
yeah,
He doesn't want to admit to himself anymore that he's Roman.
yeah. Now I remember what it was, and there was the conversation. Like it's made apparently clear that not only to us as the audience, but as to Clint himself, that Kate like pretty much worships him,
Yeah,
and so like he tries really hard to tell Kate not to consider him a role model, but
yeah.
that's just she won't let him have it that way
I
because
think, yeah.
there are things that do inspire her because of him and his actions in the series as well.
I honestly think the thing that will really clue in Clint as to why she really does appreciate him is she's going to tell him that the day her father died, Clint saved her life from the Shatari
Yeah,
during the events of the Avengers, and I think that's gonna makes Clint realize like I am way more important to this girl than I could ever imagine
yeah,
because like on the worst day of her life, he was the only good thing that happened that day.
yeah.
So yeah. It's also interesting that he name dropped Black Widow as the one to kill Ronan, which we all know is symbolic and not literal.
Yeah.
But we have to remember that Yelena Belova is going to be in this show, and so we will see Black Widow come again.
Right. I keep forgetting that like there's going to be all these like passing down of the torch with certain like hero names and all of that.
Yeah, with Shuri rumored to becoming Black Panther and Black Panther Wakanda Forever, Kate becoming Hawkeye, um, Yelena becoming Black Widow, Sam becoming Captain America.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then we're getting Ironheart, which is another version of Iron Man. So yeah,
Yeah.
and we're getting Patriot with Josiah Elijah, not Josiah, Elijah.
Really? Hmm.
Yeah, Elijah that we saw in Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
I'm kind of surprised to hear him coming back at all because like he's like one of those characters I feel like should not make like any heroic appearances because I feel like I don't know if it would be appropriate for his character, honestly.
For Elijah, the
Yeah.
younger kid?
Oh, for the younger kid.
No,
Okay.
no, no. Isaiah is the older man.
Oh,
Elijah is his grandson.
okay.
And in the comics, Elijah is part of the Young Avengers.
Okay. Does he like inherit his powers through?
No, in the comics, so Elijah lies initially in the comics and says that he inherited it from his grandfather, but in reality, he was taking mutant growth hormone to empower himself. But then, after a mission gone wrong where he's severely injured, he gets a blood transfer from Isaiah, which then puts the super soldier serum into his veins, and he does genuinely become a super soldier.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's the story of Elijah.
All right.
And I'm kind of confused as to why we see Isaiah and Elijah and not Josiah, which is Isaiah's son, who is a super soldier as well.
Hmm.
So, but that's a tangent for another day.
Yeah, that sounds like a massive rabbit hole that I don't even want to dive into because that bringing up that brought up a lot more questions that I was not willing to ask.
Yeah, but yeah, so we're gonna see Yelena again, and she
Which,
is
even if we don't pay attention to leaks, is kind of a given because of the end credits scene of Black Widow.
not even if you pay attention to leaks. They
Like
straight up just announced her in the show. They announced that Florence Pugh was casted in the show.
I'm saying excluding all external factors, like
Mhm.
within the lore.
It
If
makes
you are
sense.
just a person who only watches the movies, it would make sense that she's coming in this show.
Yeah. And in my opinion, I think it's that she is going to come in as another enforcer for the Tracksuit Mafia under Kingpin.
Hmm.
Like, I feel that how it's going to work is that either Kazi dies and she is his replacement, or she's going to be backup. I genuinely think it's going to be that she is coming in as an assassin when she already has a boss. Because as we know, Val isn't above skirting the law. I mean, she literally is making John Walker a superhero after he just got fired by the US government and is not subtly implying that she can steal a vibranium shield from the government.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So, those are, I think that's almost everything that's happened.
Um, I
What
will say that I am happy that I'm at least slightly uh, vindicated on the fact that I wanted the Tracksuit Mafia to be a little goofier.
Yes, I really liked how Enrique is just having a fight with his girlfriend about the Imagine Dragons concert, and Kate's just like, "Well, it's a good thing you're not going. They suck." And he's like, "I like Imagine Dragons." Speaking of dragons, I also thought it was really interesting that Crazy Horse, and the more I say it, the more I'm just like, wow, that's so many levels of problematic, but they don't name him in the show, so we only have to go off of his comic name. But when Maya is talking to her dad about dragons, he mentions the fact that dragons are in a different realm and they
Which
can cross over.
which is an obvious nod to Shang-Chi. Like it was really obvious what they were referencing. I mean, as fans, I appreciate the nod because I mean, like it doesn't make sense for them to know it, but of course, it is realistic dialogue.
But the other thing is also feel that it is a partial reference to the dragon under New York City.
Don't even get me started about the dragon under New York City.
Because
Do not get me started on that.
because here's the thing.
I
If
I swear.
Kingpin is in this show, that means the Netflix shows are canon, meaning that there is canonically a dragon skeleton under Manhattan.
You have no idea how many times I freak people out about telling them that there is a dragon underground MCU New York.
I mean, it's true though.
Like,
There is a dragon.
like I tell this to people who are fans of Marvel, and they are still freaked out.
So, I don't know what's there to freak out about. I mean, in a universe where there's aliens and magic stones that control the universe, is a dragon skeleton under New York City really that far-fetched? Is it really?
It's not. It's
In
not,
this,
and that's why when I tell people these things, I'm like so confused as to why they don't believe me.
yes, woman with magic powers enslaves town. Makes sense. This weird metal-like substance that can be used for literally anything. Not weird. Stones that control the universe. Not weird. A talking duck. Not weird. But dragon skeleton under a city, too far. But I do think it was a reference to both, especially because it would make sense that they would reference a bit of the Netflix universe, considering that Kingpin's most likely going to be in this show. We are probably getting Matt Murdock in No Way Home, and we're probably getting Jessica Jones in
Yeah,
She-Hulk.
because when we think of dragons, we think of like ones from the ancestral world and the ones from Kabbalah.
Yeah.
I
So,
hope I pronounced that one right.
yeah, it is Kunlun. This is a little bit of a side tangent. Do you think we'll see the other three protagonists from the Netflix shows,
I
being
mean,
Punisher, Iron Fist, and Luke Cage?
because we already have Jessica Jones confirmed for She-Hulk.
Not confirmed, but confirmed in quotation marks.
Yeah,
It's not official, but let's be honest here.
it,
It
it
probably
it's
is.
happening.
I'm pretty sure the source that said that Jessica Jones and She-Hulk is the same one that said Kingpin and Hawkeye
It's pretty
and
much as
and Daredevil and No Way Home.
it's pretty much as confirmed as the Spider-Man appearances that it's going to happen in that movie.
Yeah. So do you think we'll probably see Punisher, Luke Cage, and Iron Fist show up?
Oh God, I want to think about which one I want to see first.
To be perfectly honest with you,
I kind of want to see Luke Cage first.
I actually disagree. I want to see Iron Fist first.
Actually, considering that his show left off on more of a cliffhanger, That kind of makes sense why you feel that way.
Because the other thing is that I think it would be cool to see Shang-Chi with Danny Rand.
And hopefully with a better writer behind his character, I swear.
I think it would be really cool to see those characters, especially to have a fight between who's the better martial artist. Because in the comics, Shang-Chi is the better martial artist, but Danny, I think, is just stronger because of the fist.
Yeah. Well, in this iteration, he doesn't have the fist anymore.
Yes, he does.
Or he has the chi guns.
Yes, he has the guns.
He's got the guns, and that's what he has.
Yes.
He doesn't have the literal fist. He's just got guns that control his chi.
Yeah, and also left off on a cliffhanger with Orson Randall, which could tie into the Ten Rings because he is based out of China. I think they went to China, right? At the ending of Iron Fist Season 2.
I think they just went to vague Asian country. I don't think they distinguished which one.
If it is China, it would be really cool potentially to see conflict because we were told that we're potentially getting a Jiaying spin-off. Not Jiaying.
It is Jiaying, I think.
I'm confusing the name for Shang-Chi's sister with Daisy Johnson's mother.
Oh my!
Because I think Jiaying is the name of Quake's mom.
You know what? I think you're right.
Yeah, but anyways, for Shang-Chi's sister, I heard she's getting a spin-off, and I think it'd be really cool if her spin-off focused on her fight against Orson Randall's organization. Which would be really cool because then we would have a way of seeing Danny again, and the best character in the MCU, Ward Meacham. I hold this to be dear and true to my heart. Ward Meacham is the undisputed best character in the MCU.
Well, you can have your opinions.
He is amazing.
Okay.
And he's our favorite alcoholic uncle. I mean, by the ending of Iron Fist, this man is talking shit to Chinese criminals in a bar, and he's like, Danny, take over. And Danny just whips out 2 guns, fills it with chi, and fires it and destroys a bullet mid-flight.
But is there anything else that needs to be discussed about this episode of Hawkeye?
I would just say that improvement. It was definitely an improvement, and if we're going by the typical Marvel Disney Plus TV show formula, episode 4 should be a big one.
Yeah. And
I feel that is the episode where we're probably going to see the mask fall off for Eleanor, pun intended, because I think she's mad at Mask. I think that we'll probably see the first hints of Yelena, and probably a stronger hint about Kingpin.
Yeah. I do think that this episode definitely solidified Kate and Clint's relationship a little bit better.
Because he's actually trying to be responsible for her instead of trying to just, ditch her.
Yeah. He's a little bit more accepting of being the role model for her, especially after the numerous conversations that they've had.
Yeah, and especially because she helped him communicate with the son when he was deaf.
Yeah.
So, yeah. I think I feel like I was a bit more scatterbrained about this one in terms of describing it, but I want to say that I did enjoy this episode a lot, and if the show maintains this level of quality, I think it can end strong.
All right. I'm willing to give this one a 7.5 out of 10.
I would give it a 7.
I'm only adding the 0.5 just for the willingness to experiment with the one shot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Because I appreciate good cinematography whenever I see it.
Yes, I do. It was great, but let's be honest here, nothing is beating Daredevil Season 3, one take in the prison.
That is true.
That was probably the best one take in all of the MCU, and I don't see it being surpassed.
Because when you think about one takes, the only ones that really come to mind, of course, the big one in Daredevil, the big one in Punisher, there's that one small one on the bus in Shang-Chi. Mostly because that one had to distinguish itself as a kung fu action movie.
Yeah. The ones in Daredevil were great because they're always so good, because we have Punisher killing people in the prison during Season 2. We have Lights Out during Season 1. And then we get the prison during Season 3.
Yeah.
Lights Out was also really good. Okay. I think we should move on to our next topic.
Yeah, definitely.
So our next